Relatives of those on board MH370 express frustration at lack of answers provided by latest report on the plane's disappearance. Locally, long hair hit by multi-million-dollar demand for electrical salary expenses. And local activists on a mission to help victims of human trafficking in Hong Kong.
Good evening and welcome. A long-awaited independent investigation report has offered no new clues about the disappearance of Malaysia Airlines flight MH370. Investigators could only conclude the flight may have been hijacked. Families of the missing passengers were left angered and disappointed, slamming the report for leaving many questions unanswered. Jeff Tang reports.
It has been more than 4 years since MH370 disappeared from the radar on March 8, 2014, in one of the world's greatest aviation mysteries. Chinese, Malaysian and Australian authorities spared no efforts over the last few years, spending hundreds of millions of US dollars in searches that came up empty every time. Investigators still cannot explain why the Boeing 777 jet veered thousands of miles off course from its scheduled route before eventually plunging into the Indian Ocean. Authorities are still scratching their heads over where the flight carrying 239 souls from Kuala Lumpur to Beijing ended up. Today, independent investigators released a report spanning more than 800 pages with hardly any new information, only highlighting shortcomings in the government response. The only conclusive statement was that the flight may have been hijacked.
We cannot establish if the aircraft was flown by anyone other than the pilot. But we also cannot exclude the possibility that there's unlawful interference by a third party. It should be recognized that due to the significant lack of evidence available to the team, we are unable to determine with any certainty the reasons that the aircraft diverted from its far flight plan route.
Officials said the latest report is not the final one because the plane remains missing. But that offered little consolation to grieving family members who remain frustrated with gaps in the investigations and the many questions left unanswered. This Beijing man, Jiang Hui, whose mother was one of the passengers on the doomed flight, slammed the report for offering no new evidence nor assigning blame to any party. The wife of an Australian victim also slammed the inconclusive nature of the report.
I think I'm just lost, really, that nothing's come of it and that, again, we've been left with no answers. It's just unacceptable. It's ludicrous that you can lose a Boeing 777 and so long on we still have no idea where they are or what happened.
Although the Malaysian government left the door open to another search, if credible evidence of the plane's location emerges, the chances are slim. That's because this report comes 2 months after Malaysia pulled the plug on a large-scale, privately funded underwater search for the jet by US outfit Ocean Infinity. Jeff Tang, TVB News.
Locally, former lawmaker Leung Kwok Hong faces yet another court case. He's now been asked to return his wages from before he was ousted from the legislature. Leung Kwok Hong was elected to serve a 4-year term but was disqualified less than a year after taking office. That's after the High Court ruled his oath invalid. Now the Legislative Council Commission has taken legal action against the League of Social Democrats member. In a claim filed to the High Court, it wants Leung Kwok Hong to pay $2.98 million back. That includes wages, advance of operating funds, reimbursements for running his office, and interest.
It's a little bit ridiculous, and also I feel very surprised. I'm still appealing to the case of my disqualification. So, what is the reason for them to be hurried up? I think the scandal around the safety of the railway is more important.
Last year, Lau Siu Lai, Nathan Law and Edward Yu were also kicked out of LegCo in the same ruling over their oaths. They were also asked to repay their wages and subsidies of between $2.7 and $3.1 million each. Following a deal with the Electoral Commission, the three capped their wages but had to return between $190,000 and $310,000 in unused prepayments. Leung Kwok-hong didn't accept the proposal, which is why the Electoral Commission decided to take legal action against him.
Well, today marks World Day Against Trafficking in Persons. There's now a handbook for different professions to identify potential victims. Sharon Tang tells us more about the joint efforts in helping trafficked persons locally.
To identify an issue, one must learn how to define the subject. So what exactly is human trafficking?
They are under debt bondage, or they are not allowed to leave their employer's home after off duty, or they are worried about resigning from their job because they are worried that their family or themselves are under harassment.
Last year, a task force of 27 NGOs surveyed more than 400 migrant workers in Hong Kong. In a taped interview, a 26-year-old Indonesian woman described constant sexual abuse by her male employer. She was unable to leave as her travel documents were kept and she was forbidden to contact family or friends. She was freed after her contract ended. The Hong Kong Civil Society Anti-Human Trafficking Task Force also found a third of Indonesian migrant workers signed debt agreements if they cannot afford excessive recruitment fees. Nearly half of the Filipino domestic helpers surveyed weren't allowed to leave their workplace even when off duty. They feared consequences for themselves or their families if they quit. So the group produced a handbook with international protocols to help people identify and assist trafficked persons. The task force hopes that by distributing the handbook, more people will be aware of the human trafficking situation in Hong Kong and encourage more victims to speak out. While copies will be issued to government agencies, authorities stress that the Immigration Department and Labour Department will continue to fight against local trafficking crimes with targeted measures such as screening. Sharon Tang, TVB News.
Another day of hearings for an independent committee looking at the city's franchised bus services. Today's focus was on suggestions submitted by drivers' unions. The committee's chairman, Michael Leung, quoted data from KMB which says there were some 40 cases of drivers under assault this year. A Motor Transport Workers General Union representative said the number of actual cases may be even higher, as some drivers were afraid to report this kind of incident. Leung asked if the union would agree to install cameras on buses, but union members are worried about drivers being constantly monitored.
China has offered to open talks with Britain on a post-Brexit free trade deal. The overture to London comes as Beijing remains mired in a bitter trade war with Washington. The UK government, meanwhile, is under pressure to show it remains in control of the Brexit process, despite a series of resignations and ongoing disagreements.
Two things I think of particular interest to people back home was the offer made by Foreign Minister Wang to open discussions about a possible free trade deal done between Britain and China post-Brexit. And that's something that we welcome and we said that we will explore. We also brought up some important consular cases.
Britain has pushed a strong message to Chinese companies that it is fully open for business as it prepares to leave the European Union next year. Hunt also urged China to respect the joint declaration, a treaty signed between London and Beijing on how Hong Kong should be governed after the handover. Wang says that Beijing is committed to maintaining Hong Kong's one country, two systems principle and told Hunt that the SAR is an internal matter for China.
In Cambodia, Hun Sen's reign as leader will continue. He was an easy winner in the latest general election, but as Peter Koveos explains, his victory is being questioned for its credibility.
Congratulations on a wonderful victory for democracy.
Hun Sen returned to work today. The Prime Minister of Cambodia was the only foreseeable winner in the election. His ruling Cambodian People's Party claimed all 125 parliamentary seats available. The only real challengers were dissolved last year by the Supreme Court. the Cambodian National Rescue Party was found guilty of trying to dissolve the government and watch the election results from overseas.
So Mr. Hun Sen seems to be victorious, but it is a meaningless victory because he won without any real challenger.
Others had stronger words.
29 July 2018 marked the death of democracy in Cambodia, a new dark day of its history. It was to be a celebration of democracy where people would have exercised their right to choose their own government. Unfortunately, that choice had already been made for them before polls opened.
Those still in the country didn't really discuss the election, but hope the government can help improve the economy. This taxi driver is hoping more foreign investment can lead to more jobs in the country. One job foreigners did not help with was overseeing the results. International observers from the US and the EU declined to take part in vote counting and believed the result was predetermined. One local observation group was actually overseen by one of Hun Sen's sons. So after Sunday, Hun Sen's grip on power remains secure. His victory means he will rule for another 5-year term. The 65-year-old said he wants to sit 2 more terms. Peter Caveos, TVB News.
Zimbabweans are voting today in their first election without former President Robert Mugabe on the ballot. Polling stations in Harare were packed with voters anxious for change following years of economic and political paralysis during the nearly 4-decade rule of 94-year-old Mugabe. About 5.5 million people are registered to vote in the Southern African nation. The 2 main contenders are 75-year-old President Emmerson Mnangagwa and former Deputy President who took over from Mugabe last year. The other choice is 40-year-old Nelson Chamisa. He's a lawyer and pastor who heads the opposition party. Thousands of election monitors have fanned out across the country to observe a process that the opposition says is biased against them, despite assurances that it will be credible.
And still ahead tonight. Ballots out for potential homeowners looking to buy second-hand HOS flats. Hospital Authority kickstarts subsidized colon cancer screening program.
呢一次嚟到孟加拉識咗亞斯瑪，因為窮，父母喺佢16歲嘅時候將佢嫁出去，咁細個仲要照顧個女，佢都唔知將來會點。21歲嘅提斯瑪已經要返工，每個鐘要剪100條牛仔褲嘅布，啲手指都損晒，睇到都心痛。佢哋只係爭一個改變生命嘅機會，請你立即助養兒童，等小朋友可以快樂成長。
Welcome back to TVB News. If you've applied to purchase a second-hand HOS flat, you might want to check your numbers as the ballot for eligible buyers came out today. Caleb Loon reports.
And the numbers are out. There are 36, 70, 71, 13, 53, 54, 9, 75, 79, and 49. These are the first 10 of 100 numbers drawn for the Whiteform Secondary Market Scheme 2018. The scheme is for non-public housing residents within the income and asset limit who wish to buy second-hand HOS flats without premium paid. Chairman of the Housing Authority's Subsidized Housing Committee said the unit's allotment ratio was based on need.
We do have to balance between the need for the families to have a decent accommodation, as well as for some of the singleton who have perhaps an aspiration of having their own living space.
This year there are more than 60,000 applicants. Around 57% of them are singletons, the rest are family applicants. However, just 10% of the 2,500 allotted units are reserved for singletons. Although the upcoming new HOS flats will be sold at 48% of the market price, these flats will still be sold at a 30% discount. Some may question if it's the right time to buy now.
Any reasonable buyer should wait and see whether they can be eligible to get the new policy, the new HOS or not. Once they know that, they cannot buy the new HOS scheme house, and they will return to the second market scheme.
Successful applicants will be given the green light as soon as October. They will have a year to purchase a flat after acquiring a certificate of eligibility to purchase. Caleb Leung, TVB News.
Colon cancer is one of the deadliest forms of cancer in Hong Kong. As Kena Chiu reports, the health department is launching a subsidized colon cancer screening program starting next Monday.
If you're aged 50 to 70, you might be interested in the health department's upcoming colorectal cancer screening program. From Monday, the program's first phase will screen eligible residents born from 1942 to 1957 for colon cancer.
Because it is hidden inside your tummy, you don't feel anything. By the time you recognize there are some discomforts like abdominal swelling or poor appetite or bleeding in your stool, then it's already quite advanced.
To take part in the program, those eligible must first register on the electronic health recording sharing system and make an appointment with one of the 685 primary care doctors enrolled in the program. After that, they will be subsidized by the government to undergo a fecal occult blood test. If results are positive, subsidies ranging between $280 and $8,500 will be given for further checkups and procedures depending on each patient's condition.
The government will set aside 940 million Hong Kong dollars over the coming 5 years. That the number of beneficiaries will be more than 3 times the current number, increasing from 0.82 million people to 2.55 million people.
In a previous pilot scheme, about 70% of the nearly 70,000 participants successfully dodged cancerous changes in their colons. The new program is expected to prevent some 650 cancer occurrences and 6,500 adenoma cases annually in the coming 5 years. Kena Chiu, TVB News.
Crews in California continue to fight wildfires that have killed at least 6 people. In Kazakh scorched land and empty burnt-out lots remain where houses once stood. Tens of thousands have been told to evacuate. Thousands of personnel have tried to contain the multiple blazes that are raging across the region. But there are signs of optimism as officials seem to be making progress on the so-called car fire that affected the city of Reading.
We're feeling a lot more optimistic today as we are starting to gain some ground. Rather than being in the defensive mode on this fire all the time, we're thinking by tonight you'll start seeing containment percentages increase.
The publisher of the New York Times said he implored U.S. President Donald Trump at a private White House meeting this month to reconsider his broad attacks on journalists. In a statement, A.G. Sulzberger said he decided to comment publicly after Trump revealed details of their off-the-record meeting to his more than 53 million Twitter followers on Sunday. In his tweet, Trump berated the media for putting out vast amounts of fake news. Sulzberger said Trump's aides had requested that the July 20th meeting not be made public. He called Trump's anti-press rhetoric not just divisive, but increasingly dangerous. And that's all from the team for now.